Despite President Trump's calls to revive the coal energy sector in the United States, New Mexico is staying the course with renewable and alternative energy sources. A New Mexico-based immigrants' rights group has joined a federal lawsuit challenging a controversial agreement allowing the IRS to share taxpayer information with the Department of Homeland Security. 3 major universities here in New Mexico have reported international students getting their visas revoked. Inmates from the Western New Mexico Correctional Facility are suing the New Mexico Corrections Department for, quote, abhorrent living conditions. And Bernalillo County commissioners are urging Mayor Tim Keller to approve a multi-million-dollar plan aimed at reducing the impact of the opioid epidemic. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Thursday, April 10th, and I'll have more on those stories in a few moments, plus a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
While President Donald Trump has recently taken steps to revive the struggling U.S. coal industry, New Mexico is firmly sticking to its clean energy goals, signaling that the state's shift away from coal is unlikely to be reversed.
New Mexico for years has been on a clean energy pathway with set goals and standards to achieve renewable energy generation in the state.
My colleague Megan Gleason is a co-business editor at the Journal.
So with the president announcing this plan to kind of revive coal as a major power generator, it doesn't really fit with the state's existing clean energy plans.
Trump signed 4 executive orders this week aimed at supporting coal power, including measures allowing older coal plants to continue operating and blocking certain coal-restricted policies enacted under the Biden administration. Trump specifically cited the Cholla power plant in Arizona, which is scheduled to retire, as a symbol of what he wants to preserve. However, in New Mexico, state officials and utility companies say Trump's moves won't sway their plans. The state once had 3 operating coal-fired power plants, but now only the Four Corners generating station near Fruitland remains active, and that is set to shut down in 2031. The Public Service Company of New Mexico, or P&M, the state's largest electricity provider, has been working for nearly a decade to move away from coal, both because it is more economical and to meet climate and energy standards outlined in New Mexico's Energy Transition Act. That law, passed in 2019, requires utilities to achieve net zero electricity generation by 2045, with interim goals like 50% renewables by 2030. P&M has committed to going fully carbon-free by 2040. A company spokesperson reaffirmed its dedication to those goals, even as it prepares to exit its last coal-powered plant. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, along with New York Governor Katie Hochul, pushed back against Trump's executive orders, emphasizing that states have the constitutional right to make their own energy policies. Officials in New Mexico's Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department echoed this stance, stating that utilities have moved away from coal primarily for economic reasons. The state's Environment Department also noted that reviving shuttered plants like San Juan or Escalante would require costly renovations and is highly unlikely. San Juan has already been demolished, and Escalante is being considered for clean energy repurposing. Even with the Four Corners plant under Navajo Nation jurisdiction, P&M is still proceeding with its exit plan. Meanwhile, Arizona's Cholla power plant, mentioned in Trump's speech, has already stopped generating electricity, with its future uncertain. The utility that owns it is exploring other generation options, such as nuclear. It says it has already secured cost-effective replacements for the lost power. Ultimately, despite renewed federal support for coal, New Mexico is staying the course on its clean energy transition, driven by state laws, economic reasoning, and environmental priorities. A New Mexico-based immigrant rights group, Somos Un Pueblo Unido, has joined a federal lawsuit challenging a controversial agreement allowing the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, to share taxpayer information with the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, a move that breaks with decades of precedents. Since the 1990s, undocumented immigrants who pay taxes using individual taxpayer identification numbers have done so with the understanding that their personal information would not be shared with immigration enforcement agencies. agencies. This new agreement, made public on Monday, allows the IRS to share some taxpayer data with the Department of Homeland Security only for individuals already under deportation orders or involved in criminal investigations. Marcela Diaz, executive director of Somos Un Pueblo Unido, called the shift, quote, immoral and, quote, devastating to immigrant communities and local economies in New Mexico. She emphasized that families, small businesses, and the state's tax base would suffer if immigrants lose trust in the system and stop filing taxes. The lawsuit, filed in March and supported by 3 other immigrant advocacy organizations, argues that the IRS has no legal authority to share tax information in this way. Although a judge refused to halt the agreement immediately, another hearing is set for next week. Somos Un Pueblo Unido has spent 30 years encouraging immigrants to file taxes with identification numbers, promoting benefits like building credit, opening bank accounts, getting mortgages, and even obtaining a driver's license in New Mexico. Roughly 16% of small business owners in the state use identification numbers, according to the American Immigration Council. This change aligns with President Donald Trump's broader immigration enforcement agenda, including a January executive order emphasizing increased deportations and the importance of immigration enforcement for national security. The order argues that undocumented immigrants have burdened U.S. taxpayers and institutions. In response, 23 members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, including New Mexico Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez, urged the IRS to reconsider the data sharing agreement, raising concerns about its chilling effect on law-abiding taxpayers. At a state level, New Mexico's legislature passed Senate Bill 36.
State legislature passed a bill in this most recent session.
My colleague Kathy Cook covers the federal government for the Journal.
That prohibits or would prohibit state agencies from sharing personal information with outside agencies. And so this is a bill that was supported by a lot of domestic violence survivor groups, but also by immigrant rights advocacy groups because, it protects information that's collected by the Department of Motor Vehicles from being shared with agencies like Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Diaz expressed hope that Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham will sign the bill into law to help reinforce protections for immigrant communities. Several international students at major New Mexico universities have had their student visas revoked by the U.S. Department of State, a move tied to a broader national crackdown on immigration and campus activism. The University of New Mexico State University, and New Mexico Tech in Socorro confirmed that students at their institutions have been affected. While UNM did not disclose exact numbers, NMSU reported 6 revoked visas, 3 initially found, and 3 more identified later through the Federal Student Exchange Visitor Information System database. Combined, the 3 schools host nearly 2,000 international students.
Students across New Mexico had their visas revoked by the Trump administration. And
my colleague Noah Kalabach covers education for the Journal.
It kind of serves this 2-pronged issue. You have a White House that's vowing to crack down on what it calls anti-Semitism on college campuses, following some of these pro-Palestinian protests that have taken place. And then you also have, the long-standing campaign promise, even from the first Trump term of, securing the nation's borders, cracking down on immigration.
This follows a January 20th executive order from President Donald Trump aimed at tightening visa scrutiny, especially for those perceived to bear, quote, hostile attitudes towards American institutions or who might support foreign terrorist organizations. The order is part of a broader immigration agenda the administration has prioritized, including promises to increase deportations, crack down on perceived anti-Semitism, and disruptive activism on college campuses. Across the country, hundreds of student visas have been revoked in recent weeks. While reasons vary from minor legal offenses to involvement in campus protests against Israel's war in Gaza, federal officials have not provided specific details in many cases. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed 300 revocations this year and emphasized that activism plays a role in these decisions, stating, quote, "We are not going to be importing activists into the United States. They are here to go to class, not lead disruptive movements." In New Mexico, both UNM and NMSU saw student protests over Gaza last year, some of which involved arrests. However, the universities have not confirmed any links between those protests and the students whose visas were revoked. UNM spokeswoman Cinnamon Blair acknowledged that these changes in immigration immigration status caused significant distress, saying the situation has created, quote, uncertainty and anxiety in the international community. NMSU President Valerio Fermin announced the formation of a task force to study the impacts of federal orders on the university's mission and operations. Meanwhile, other universities in the state, like Eastern New Mexico University, Western New Mexico University, and New Mexico Highlands University, reported no known visas being revoked as of now. University officials are encouraging concerned students to reach out to their international student offices for guidance and support. 5 women incarcerated at the Western New Mexico Correctional Facility have filed a lawsuit against the New Mexico Corrections Department alleging, quote, abhorrent living conditions that they claim led to widespread illness among inmates. Filed on March 20th in the 1st District Judicial Court, the suit describes unsanitary conditions such as infestations of rats, cockroaches, and pigeons, and even food trays contaminated with pigeon feces.
A lot of them contracted this disease called H. pylori.
My colleague Nikayla McClellan is a reporter at the Journal.
And it's basically this bacterial infection that really messes with stomach lining. It can cause abdominal pain, vomiting, and it can also cause ulcers. So attorneys are worried about long-term health even following this lawsuit.
The outbreak has reached epidemic levels, with inmates facing the likelihood of long-term health issues. The NMCD declined to comment directly on the pending lawsuit, but stated via a spokesperson that the department, quote, takes the health and well-being of those entrusted in their care seriously. This isn't the first time concerns about prison conditions have been raised. Collins noted that since 2018, his firm has filed around 50 similar legal actions against NMCD, alleging neglect and poor conditions, yet little has changed. Advocacy groups have also stepped in. In 2024, the ACLU of New Mexico wrote to the prison's warden, expressing concern over hygiene and inmate health. ACLU attorney Lolita Moskowitz said that only after sending a second letter did the facility take minimal steps, such as installing plastic curtains to keep pigeons out of the kitchen. Despite the allegations, NMCD maintains the facility meets safety standards, stating it passed 2 inspections from the New Mexico Environment Department, one in January and another on April 4th, with, quote, flying colors. Yet for many inmates, those inspections appear to contradict the lived reality of poor sanitation and inadequate medical care. Collins and advocacy groups argue that unless significant reforms are made, inmates will continue to suffer preventable illnesses in a system that appears reluctant to change. Bernalillo County Commissioners are urging Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller to approve a multi-million-dollar plan aimed at reducing the impact of the opioid epidemic. The plan aligns closely with one passed by the Albuquerque City Council on April 7th and directs funds from a major $150 million opioid settlement with pharmaceutical companies towards prevention and recovery programs.
Just before the COVID-19 pandemic, a number of states and municipalities sued big pharmaceutical companies, arguing that the companies misled Americans about the addictive effects of opioids and overprescribed them for a number of years.
My colleague Justin Garcia covers local government for the Journal.
And that directly led to the crisis that's killed tens of thousands of Americans in the last few decades. This money is a settlement from that lawsuit, and it's meant to mitigate and remediate some of the worst effects of the crisis. And the Albuquerque and Bernalillo County combined are set to receive about $150 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's not all dispersed at once. About a fifth of it has been dispersed so far to the 2 municipalities, and the rest will come over the next 15 to 20 years or so.
Under the proposal, about $17 million would be allocated across 3 key areas. $10 million for capital improvements to help nonprofits expand services, $2 million in grants for small providers to enhance and grow their support offerings, and $5 million over 3 years for Albuquerque Public Schools Crossroads program aimed at preventing youth drug use. The settlement funding, split between the city $80 million and the county $70 million, is being distributed over 20 years. This plan marks the latest effort to put those dollars to work. Mayor Keller has not yet signed off on the plan. His administration had proposed using the funds for operating costs of existing efforts like the Gateway Centers, but City Council opted to invest in new long-term community efforts, passing the plan by an 8-1 vote. Commissioners emphasized the importance of community support to urge urged the mayor to move the plan forward. Commissioner Eric Avalos said the goal is to look back in 5 to 10 years and see a real lasting impact from the investment. Commissioner Adrian Barboa added that while no plan is perfect, this is a strong start towards meaningful change. The county passed its version of the plan in a 5-0 vote, with only one more vote required to finalize it. Mayor Keller's decision now remains a crucial step in determining how the city's share of the settlement will be used. If you like hearing all of the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal here on the Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription and keep up with all the latest news from New Mexico's leading news source. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect sunny skies with a high near 84, and this evening mostly clear with a low around 46. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. I'm Gino Gutierrez. The Leading News will be back tomorrow.